Get over it and stop being such a drama queen, my niece demanded, after bringing my son's bully to family dinner. Your kid needs to toughen up anyway. This is real life. She added, stop ruining my relationship over your sensitive child. So I told her to get her boyfriend to fund her med school instead of me. Now everyone's calling me the villain. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Get over it, my niece demanded, after she brought my son's bully to family dinner. So I told her to get him fund her med school. Now everyone thinks I'm the villain. Sup Reddit. As the title says, I cut off my niece's college fund after she brought my son's bully to a family dinner. Now I get that some people will say, it was a long time ago and they were just kids. And I agree. If the bullying was just name-calling and pulling hair, but it wasn't. It was worse, cruel, and nearly cost me my son. The worst part? My family acts like it's no big deal. They told me to get over it. So I did, by cutting them off and destroying the guy using nothing but his own criminal record. Here's how it all went down. Let me paint you a picture of where this whole mess started. I, 41 male, have basically lived the American dream on steroids. Except my version included a lot more mud, blood, and bureaucratic nonsense than the marketing brochures promised. Growing up in Riverside, Ohio was exactly as glamorous as it sounds. Picture rusted-out cars on blocks, neighbors who thought domestic disputes were primetime entertainment, and a landlord who fixed broken pipes with duct tape and prayer. My dad bounced when I was 8, left for cigarettes one Tuesday, and apparently got lost for the next 20 years. Mom worked at Walmart during the day, cleaned office buildings at night, and did people's taxes during busy season just to keep our lights on. The trailer had paper-thin walls, so I heard every conversation about overdue bills, every phone call from debt collectors. Every night Mom cried herself to sleep thinking I couldn't hear. That's something that stays with you forever. High school guidance counselors kept pushing college brochures at me like I was gonna magically find 40,000 lying around somewhere. Instead, I walked into the Marine recruiting office the day after graduation, wearing my only decent shirt and shoes that were more duct tape than leather. Recruiter took one look at me and knew he had a live one. Did 2 tours in Afghanistan between 2003 and 2007. Won't bore you with war stories, but let's just say I learned some very specific skills about logistics, problem solving, and what happens when you mess with people I care about. Came back with a Bronze Star, some gnarly scars, and enough GI Bill benefits to actually make college happen. Used every penny of that benefit studying business and logistics management at Ohio State. Lived in a glorified closet, worked FedEx weekends, survived on ramen and leftover campus pizza. Graduated debt-free in May 2008. Perfect timing to watch the entire economy implode like a controlled demolition. While everyone else was crying about the recession, I saw opportunity. Started Rodriguez Logistics with one beat-up cargo van and a cell phone, doing local deliveries for whoever would pay cash. Worked 16-hour days, slept 4 hours, repeat. No social life, no hobbies, just pure grinding until something better came along. That something was a DoD contract in 2010 moving military equipment between bases. Government work meant regular payments, and regular payments meant I could buy more vehicles. More vehicles meant bigger contracts. And that meant I could hire actual employees instead of doing everything myself. Fast forward to 2015, and Rodriguez Aviation Logistics was handling cargo contracts for defense contractors, pharmaceutical companies, and oil giants. We're not just moving boxes anymore. We're coordinating complex supply chains worth millions of dollars. Think FedEx, but for stuff that explodes or costs more than most people's houses. My wife Claire manages investment portfolios for rich people. Between her financial wizardry and my logistics empire, we're pulling in mid-7 figures annually. Bought a house in Meadowbrook Estates, one of those gated communities where the HOA has rules about what color mailboxes you can have and when you're allowed to mow your lawn. But here's the thing about clawing your way up from nothing. You never really forget what powerless feels like. Every success feels temporary, every setback feels personal, and you develop this almost paranoid need to protect what you've built. You spend your life bracing for someone to take it all away. So when you get something good, you hold on like hell. When my son Lucas was born in 2010, I thought I had life figured out. Kid arrived after 18 hours of labor that had Claire threatening to murder me in increasingly creative ways. Standard dad stuff, counting fingers and toes, making sure everything was where it should be, except everything wasn't where it should be. Lucas came out with bilateral cleft lip and palate, which basically means his upper lip and roof of his mouth didn't form properly during development. Picture a gap running from his nostril down through his lip, plus an opening in the roof of his mouth that connected to his nasal cavity. The next 10 years involved 6 major surgeries to reconstruct his lip, close the palate, and rebuild the bone structure in his face. Each surgery meant weeks of recovery, months of speech therapy, and watching your kid adapt to a world that stares at anyone who looks different. Lucas handled it like an absolute champion. Kid taught himself Python before he could ride a bike, built his first gaming PC at age 10 using YouTube tutorials and sheer determination. Smart as hell, funny in that dark way that kids develop when they've been through real stuff, and generally gave zero damns about looking different from other kids. The facial scarring isn't dramatic, mostly just some asymmetry around his upper lip and a slight difference in how his nose sits. His speech has improved over the years, though certain sounds still come out slightly different. Lucas cruised through elementary school without major issues. Teachers loved him. He had a solid group of friends who were into the same nerdy stuff, and generally life was good. Then 7th grade happened, and he met Alan Davis. Alan wasn't your standard mouth-breathing bully who solved problems with his fists. This kid came from the kind of money that thinks rules are more like suggestions. His dad Richard owns Davis Properties, half the commercial real estate in our county, shopping centers, office buildings, the works. Mom Helen is a partner at Whitman, Davis and Associates, one of those law firms that charges $600 an hour to tell you why you can't sue them. The targeting started immediately when school began in August. Alan made a game out of mimicking Lucas's speech in crowded halls. He'd make exaggerated facial expressions while talking to Lucas, pretending to be friendly while actually mocking his appearance. But Alan's real genius was staying just under the radar of school disciplinary action. Never quite crossed the line into anything teachers could definitively prove, always had plausible deniability when confronted. "I was just talking to him," he'd say. The digital harassment was even more sophisticated. Alan created fake accounts on Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok using Lucas's photos and information, posted zoom-ins of Lucas's face with garbage captions like "genetic freak" and "failed surgery." Alan recruited other kids to participate by making it seem like harmless fun. "Hey, ask Lucas to say, 'Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers,' and film it." The speech sounds that gave Lucas trouble turned into viral content for kids who thought harassment was entertainment. Lucas tried hiding it from us initially, started avoiding speaking in class, quit the debate team where he'd been star performer, stopped going to any social events or after-school activities. Classic isolation tactics that predators use to break down their victims' support systems. I noticed the changes but figured it was normal teenage stuff. Kids adjusting to middle school, dealing with hormones, whatever. Claire was more concerned. She'd catch Lucas staring at himself in mirrors, asking questions about fixing his appearance that he'd never worried about before. The real red flag was when Lucas stopped coding. This kid lived and breathed programming, spent hours doing that for fun. Suddenly his computer was collecting dust, while he spent entire weekends in his room with the curtains closed. When we tried talking to him about it, Lucas just said middle school was different, and he was figuring things out. Didn't want to worry us, didn't want to admit that some rich kid was destroying his self-confidence for fun. But I wasn't completely blind to what was happening. The first time I caught wind of the harassment was during Lucas's first semester, when I picked him up early for a dentist appointment. Walking through the hallway toward his locker, I heard some kid making exaggerated speech sounds behind us, the kind of mocking that every parent learns to recognize. Turned around and found Alan with 2 of his buddies, all 3 of them mimicking Lucas's pronunciation. Alan had the audacity to smile and wave when he saw me looking, like we were all sharing some innocent joke. I walked straight up to him, got down to his eye level, and used my command voice from the Marines. "You got something to say. You say it to me directly. Right now." Alan went from cocky teenager to scared little boy in about half a second. Started stammering about how they were just playing around and didn't mean anything by it. His friends scattered like roaches when you turn on the lights. "Playing around ends now," I told him. Kid nodded. Thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The breaking point came in November, during what I now call the incident. But before we get there, you need to understand that Alan wasn't acting alone anymore. He'd recruited a whole crew of kids who thought destroying Lucas was some kind of group project. Lucas's grades started slipping for the first time in his life. Teachers reported that he seemed distracted and withdrawn, but couldn't pinpoint why. Guidance counselors suggested maybe he needed social skills training to help him fit in better with his peers. November 15th, 2018. Dates burned into my memory like a brand because that's the day Alan crossed the line from psychological terrorism into something that would make Navy SEALs impressed. I was in a client meeting discussing a cargo contract for military drone components when my phone started buzzing. First call from Westfield Middle School went to voicemail. Second call I answered, and principal's voice had that careful, measured tone. Mr. Rodriguez, we need you to come collect Lucas immediately. There's been a situation that requires immediate attention and medical evaluation. I left that meeting so fast I probably broke the sound barrier. Drove the 12 miles to school in about 8 minutes. Found Lucas in the nurse's office. Kid looked like he had 19 rounds with Mike Tyson. Physical injuries were obvious. Black eye that was already swelling shut. Split lip. Torn clothes that used to be his favorite hoodie. Here's what happened during lunch period behind the gym. Away from cameras and supervision. Alan and 4 of his crew had been planning this for weeks. Alan approached him like he wanted to talk about a class project. Bait to get Lucas alone. Once isolated, the rest jumped in. They zip-tied his arm and propped him against the wall, filming everything. Imagine 5 teenage boys with smartphones and no conscience. That's what my son was up against. Alan narrated like it was a medical documentary, describing Lucas's surgeries like some kind of freak show exhibit. "Look at this ugly ass," Alan said directly to the camera while gesturing at Lucas's face. This is what happens when trailer park genetics meet modern medicine. Some people just aren't meant to be fixed. They took detailed photos of Lucas's surgical scars from every conceivable angle, discussing his deformities like they were documentary filmmakers studying birth defects. Clinical, detached, completely dehumanizing. The videos went live on Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok before Lucas even made it to the nurse's office. Principal Thompson showed me the footage after Lucas was stable. Watching 5 teenagers torture my son while he begged them to stop was like getting my heart ripped out through my throat. But Alan's face in those videos, the pure satisfaction, the enjoyment, the complete absence of empathy, that told me we weren't dealing with normal kids making poor decisions. Lucas's testimony was what really broke me. Between sobs and panic attacks, he described how Alan had planned every detail. The timing, the location, the equipment, even the specific words designed to cause maximum damage. The school's response was predictably useless. Lots of concern, lots of, "We take this very seriously," followed immediately by explanations about why their hands were tied. Alan's family had already contacted their attorney, who was threatening countersuits if any permanent disciplinary action was taken against his client. "Boys will be boys," Assistant Principal Davis actually said during our emergency meeting. "We can't destroy young men's futures over teenage drama that got slightly out of hand." That's when I demanded a face-to-face meeting with Alan's parents. Figured maybe they didn't understand the severity of what their son had done. Maybe they'd be horrified and take appropriate action to make things right. Biggest mistake was thinking Richard and Helen Davis were reasonable human beings. The meeting with Alan's parents happened 3 days later in Principal Thompson's office. And it went exactly how you'd expect when entitled, "Rich People Are Told Their Precious Angel Did Something Wrong." Richard and Helen showed up dressed like they were attending a board meeting rather than discussing their son's behavior. The conversation started with Principal Thompson explaining the incident in carefully neutral language designed to avoid lawsuits. Videos, photos, witness statements, medical documentation of Lucas's injuries, laid out like evidence in a criminal trial. Richard's response? "Boys will be boys. Alan is a high achiever under tremendous pressure to succeed. Sometimes stress manifests in unfortunate ways." Helen went further. "Frankly, if Lucas can't handle normal teenage interactions about his appearance, maybe he belongs in special education classes with other special needs children." That's when Richard made his fatal mistake. He looked directly at me with that smug expression and said, "Look, we're sorry your son has facial issues, but you can't expect other children to pretend everything's normal when it clearly isn't. Maybe if you'd gotten him proper speech therapy instead of coddling him, this wouldn't have happened." I don't remember deciding to hit him. One second he was smirking at me like I was some peasant who should be grateful for his attention. Next second he was on the floor with a broken nose, and I was being restrained by security guards. Totally worth the assault charge, even though my lawyer had to work overtime getting it reduced to community service and anger management classes. Sometimes violence isn't the answer, but sometimes it's the only language these people understand. They press charges immediately, of course. Couldn't have some trailer park veteran thinking he could put hands on his betters without consequences. Filed a civil suit, too, claiming emotional distress and medical expenses for Richard's rhinoplasty. The criminal case dragged on for 6 months while Lucas's situation got progressively worse. Kids stopped attending school entirely, couldn't function around groups of teenagers, started having panic attacks at the sight of camera phones, quit eating regularly, Spent most days in his room with blackout curtains drawn like a vampire avoiding sunlight. We tried homeschooling while fighting the district through lawyers. Meetings, depositions, threats of lawsuits. The whole system was designed to protect everyone except the actual victim. Meanwhile, Lucas was disappearing more each day, becoming a ghost of the confident kid he used to be. The suicide note Claire found 3 months later was hidden in his computer files. It was detailed, even had instructions for distributing his belongings afterward. Reading it was like getting shot in the chest. Your own child, explaining in heartbreaking detail why he believes the world would be better without him in it. That night, I made a decision that changed everything. Screw the house, screw the job. We were moving immediately, and I was never going to let anyone hurt my kid again. Within 6 weeks, we'd sold our house, transferred my business operations to North Carolina, and relocated to Charlotte where nobody knew us. New house in Myers Park, new school district with actual anti-bullying policies, new therapist who specialized in trauma recovery. Recovery took almost 2 years of intensive therapy, medication adjustments, and slowly rebuilding Lucas's confidence from ground zero. Started with just leaving his room regularly, progressed to online gaming with friends, eventually felt safe enough to attend South Charlotte High School. Kid's 19 now, got a full ride to Duke for computer science, runs a small tech consulting business that's already profitable. During this whole recovery process, I'd been also setting aside money for my niece Brittany's college education. Figured family helps family, and I'd promised my sister Jessica that I'd cover Brittany's medical school expenses. Smart kid, straight A's, president of student council, volunteered at the local hospital. Everything you'd want in a future doctor. Since business was booming and we had more money than we needed, I set up an education fund for her. Jessica made sure Brittany understood what Lucas had been through. Not the graphic details, but enough to know why we'd moved and why certain topics were off limits at family gatherings. Brittany seemed genuinely sympathetic, always asked about Lucas's progress, even sent him encouraging messages when he started his consulting business. So when we decided to visit Ohio for July 4th this year, first time back since the move, I figured it would be fine. Lucas was thriving at Duke, we'd be surrounded by supportive family, and it had been 5 years. July 4th, 2023. 5 years since we'd been back to Ohio, and I was actually excited about seeing family again. Lucas seemed relaxed for the first time in years, talking about showing his cousins his consulting business, maybe even discussing his experiences with kids who were heading to college themselves. We pulled into Jessica's driveway around noon, car loaded with enough BBQ supplies to feed a small army. I'd brought my competition-grade smoker, premium brisket from this place in Charlotte that literally makes angels weep, and enough craft beer to float a battleship. Ready to celebrate America and family like a proper patriot. Lucas was carrying drinks from the car when Brittany comes bouncing out of the house, like she's auditioning for a reality show. Big smile, arms spread wide, the whole enthusiastic family reunion performance. "Uncle David, I'm so excited for you to meet my boyfriend." That's when she turned and gestured toward the porch, where someone was standing in shadow behind the screen door. For a split second, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. Then Alan stepped into the sunlight wearing a polo shirt. Same dead eyes. Same smirk. 5 years older, college polished, but fundamentally the same predator who'd nearly driven my son to end his life. The recognition was mutual and immediate. But instead of showing any remorse or attempting to apologize, this psychopath actually had the balls to smile wider, looked straight at Lucas, then back at me, and said in that same condescending tone, "Well, well, Lucas Rodriguez, you look exactly the same." That sound wasn't just glass shattering. That was 5 years of progress hitting the pavement. Every bottle Lucas was carrying hit the driveway. The sound of 6 root beers detonating on concrete was like the opening bell for the worst family gathering in recorded history. But Alan didn't look away or seem uncomfortable. Just kept that predatory smile while staring at my son like he was savoring the moment. Zero remorse. Zero humanity. Pure satisfaction at seeing his victim still affected by his handiwork 5 years later. Lucas was frozen in place, looking like he'd seen the devil himself materializing in suburban Ohio. All the progress we'd made, all the therapy and healing and confidence building, just evaporated in seconds flat. "What's the problem?" Brittany asked, genuinely confused by the obvious tension. I looked at my niece, this kid I'd been planning to spend grands on, and asked her directly, "Brittany, what the hell were you thinking bringing him here?" Alan actually laughed. "Oh, come on, Mr. Rodriguez. We were just kids back then. Lucas is a big boy now, aren't you, Lucas?" That's when I knew this wasn't some reformed teenager who'd learned from his mistakes and wanted to make amends. This was the same predator, just older and more sophisticated about hiding his true nature from adults. What happened next was like watching my family reveal their true colors in real time. And let me tell you, those colors were uglier than a rusty pickup truck with mismatched panels. Brittany didn't apologize or seem concerned about Lucas's obvious distress. Instead, she got defensive about her right to bring whoever she wanted to family events. Started raising her voice about how unfair it was that Lucas couldn't just get over it and move on with his life. That was like forever ago, she said, rolling her eyes like Lucas's trauma was some inconvenient, outdated fashion trend. People change. Alan isn't the same person he was in middle school. He's pre-med at UNC, he volunteers at the hospital. He's completely different now. Jessica tried playing peacekeeper, pulling Brittany aside for damage control, while shooting me warning looks about keeping things civil for family harmony. But Brittany wasn't having it, kept escalating her voice about Lucas being overly sensitive and holding grudges. Alan stood there the entire time, with that smug expression, occasionally nodding when Brittany defended him, never once attempted to apologize or show any accountability for what he'd done. Actually seemed amused by watching my family implode over his presence. My wife Claire had heard enough. She gathered our kids and headed for the car while telling Brittany exactly what she thought of her boyfriend choice. Lucas followed her without saying a word. I stayed long enough to inform Brittany that if Alan had changed so much, maybe he could pay for her medical school too, because I was officially done funding her education. Then I told Jessica that bringing that jerk to a family gathering was either the most thoughtless thing she'd ever done or the most malicious. We spent the night at a Marriott near the airport and flew home the next morning. But something about Alan's attitude was eating at me during the entire flight back to Charlotte. The complete lack of remorse. The arrogance. This wasn't someone who'd matured and felt bad about his past behavior. So I decided to do some digging, using resources that most people don't have access to. Time to find out what Alan had really been up to during his college years. I don't move without intel. You don't grow a seven-figure logistics firm by guessing. You plan, execute, and dismantle. Called my business partner, Alex Davis, no relation to the psychopath, thankfully, on the flight home. Alex handles security clearances and personnel vetting for our DoD contracts. Former NSA analyst who knows how to find information that normal people can't access through Google searches. I need everything available on Alan Davis, age 19, currently enrolled at UNC Chapel Hill, I told him, while Lucas slept in the seat next to me, still looking drained from the family encounter. The report came back 48 hours later via encrypted email, and it was a goldmine of sociopathic behavior that made his middle school activities look like amateur hour. Multiple conduct violations at UNC that somehow disappeared from his official record, the kind of erasure that requires serious money and legal connections. Underage consumption citations that got mysteriously dismissed. Photos on his private social media accounts showing him dealing prescription medications at fraternity parties like he was running a pharmaceutical operation. But the real treasure was buried in his roommate's formal complaint to campus housing from 6 months earlier. Kid named Brandon Walsh had documented everything before filing the report, including photos of Alan's drug supply and detailed records of his transactions. According to Brandon's statement, Alan had been running a sophisticated operation out of their dorm room. Adderall for students cramming for exams, Xanax for kids with anxiety, OxyContin for anyone willing to pay premium prices. We're talking about serious quantities, enough to supply half the campus with whatever chemical assistance they needed. Brandon had tried confronting Alan about it, worried about legal consequences if they got caught. Alan's response was to threaten Brandon's family with consequences if he reported anything, then arranged to have Brandon beaten up by some fraternity brothers who owed him money. The financial records Alex pulled were even more interesting. Cash deposits that didn't match Alan's part-time job income at the campus bookstore. We're talking about $15,000 plus in unexplained income over 6 months. Serious money for a college student, even one from a wealthy family. But here's where it got really disturbing. Alex had also accessed Alan's private social media accounts through methods I'm not going to describe. Screenshots of posts from his inner circle showing parties where they'd target weak students for psychological games. Photos of kids crying at parties. Mocking captions. One post from 6 months ago literally said, "Some people never learn their place," with photos that looked suspiciously like they were taken near Lucas's old school in Ohio. This psychopath had actually driven back to Ohio specifically to reminisce about his middle school torture campaign. Another post showed Alan and his crew at a UNC party, surrounding some freshman who was clearly having a panic attack, with the caption, "Teaching Social Hierarchy to Scholarship Kids." Same predatory behavior, just targeting college students instead of middle schoolers. That's when I realized Brittany hadn't just brought my son's former bully to our family gathering. She'd brought an active criminal who was still destroying people's lives, just with better legal protection and more sophisticated methods. Time for some justice. But first, I needed to deal with my family's increasingly unhinged harassment campaign. Jessica started calling within hours of our departure, demanding I reconsider cutting off Brittany's college fund. When I stopped answering her calls, she began showing up at my house unannounced. They showed up unannounced. First Jess and Brittany, then the whole clan. Jessica didn't come to talk. She came to lecture. Marched into my house like she paid the mortgage, dropped her purse on the counter, and launched straight in, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You're really going to torch my daughter's future because she's dating someone you don't like? Are you even listening to yourself? She's worked for this her whole life. Top grades. Scholarships. You said you'd help her. And now you're pulling it just because of your issues? That's insane." I didn't say a word. She took it as a permission to continue. Bad habit. Alan was a dumb teenager, just like Lucas. But you act like he's the Antichrist. Meanwhile, your son's at Duke. Full ride. Thriving. Maybe it's time you admit Alan did him a favor. Made him stronger. I stepped in close. No raised voice. You think Lucas's success came from being bullied? He didn't thrive because of Alan. He survived in spite of him. Your daughter isn't being punished for dating the wrong guy. She's being cut off for bringing a predator to my doorstep and calling it love. So don't you dare talk to me like I'm the problem here. Jessica looked like she'd been slapped. Consider this your final courtesy. Next time, don't walk in here like you're still family. She grabbed her purse and stormed out. Didn't even close the door behind her. You'd think it stopped here? Nope, it didn't. Brittany went full social media psychopath during these surprise visits. Posted Instagram stories about her abusive uncle who was punishing her for her boyfriend's childhood mistakes. Created TikToks about toxic family members who destroy young people's futures over petty grudges from literal middle school. Even started a GoFundMe for her medical school tuition with a sob story about family abandonment and financial abuse. The campaign included photos of Lucas from when he was younger, calling him "my cousin who can't forgive or forget," and suggesting his disability made him overly sensitive to normal teenage behavior. My parents were even worse than Brittany's social media manipulation. Mom kept calling Lucas's condition a blessing in disguise that should have made him stronger and more resilient to normal social challenges. Dad suggested maybe Lucas needed to learn to be a man instead of hiding behind his disability and past trauma. "You're coddling that boy," Dad said during one particularly heated phone call. "Real men don't hold grudges over childhood nonsense. Maybe if Lucas acted more normal, kids wouldn't have picked on him in the first place." Alan even showed up to one of these family intervention sessions, playing the reformed bad boy angle with Academy Award-worthy performance. Lots of generic "I was just a kid." And I've learned so much about empathy since then, without ever actually apologizing for anything specific. Just carefully crafted remorse theater designed to manipulate my family into pressuring me to restore Brittany's college fund and forgive past mistakes for the sake of family unity. The final straw came when Jessica and Brittany decided to ambush Lucas at his summer internship. He's working at a logistics software company in Charlotte. They cornered him in the parking lot after his shift, with Brittany filming everything for social media documentation. Jessica demanded Lucas tell his father to stop being vindictive and think about Brittany's future instead of dwelling on ancient history. When Lucas tried to leave, Brittany physically blocked his path while continuing to record, asking him why he couldn't forgive and forget like a mature adult, and whether he enjoyed destroying other people's dreams out of spite. Lucas had a full panic attack right there in front of his coworkers. Complete meltdown, hyperventilating, the whole trauma response he'd worked years to overcome. His supervisor had to call paramedics because they thought he was having a cardiac event. That's when I stopped playing defense and went full scorched earth. First move was filing restraining orders against Jessica, Brittany, my parents, and Danny. Had my lawyer send cease and desist letters to anyone who'd been harassing us online or ambushing Lucas in person. But the restraining orders were just the opening move in a much larger strategic operation. Time to introduce Alan to the concept of consequences. The thing about working in defense logistics is you develop certain capabilities. When you're moving sensitive materials worth millions, you don't think emotionally. You build systems, follow threat protocols, and act with surgical precision. I spent 2 weeks compiling an intelligence package on Alan Davis's criminal activity. Financials, social media screenshots, witness statements, roommate complaints, Every scrap of dirt my investigator dug up, plus some internal tools we use for security screening. Let's just say I had more than enough. Then I launched the operation. I created multiple anonymous email accounts, anonymized them. Each one delivered part of the picture to UNC administration, campus police, the local DA, and the DEA's regional task force. Different tips, same target, Alan Davis. No fake evidence, no embellishments, just the uncut truth presented in a way no one could ignore. But I wasn't done. I sent a copy to the North Carolina State Medical Board. A little heads up that one of their future applicants had a fondness for controlled substances and intimidation. Forwarded a financial breakdown to the IRS, highlighting Alan's little side hustle income. And I sent the whole damn package, gift-wrapped, to an investigative reporter at the Charlotte Observer, who'd just done a piece on drug rings in college Greek life. Then I made one quiet call to my old buddy Jake Morrison, now a detective in Chapel Hill PD. Told him this kid might have deeper family ties worth poking at. Jake just said, "Funny timing. We've had a few things pop about UNC lately. I'll take a closer look." The dominoes fell fast. Within 72 hours, campus police raided Alan's dorm. They found Adderall, Xanax, Oxy, packaging supplies, transaction logs, enough to start a mini CVS. He got expelled on the spot. Not suspended, banned. Federal agents were notified. Turns out selling Schedule II narcotics to rich kids isn't protected by Daddy's legal team. The local DA charged him with felony distribution. Witnesses came forward, including his old roommate, Brandon. Kid had receipts. Literally. Even better? The financial trail led straight to unexplained income streams. Venmo logs, ATM deposits, you name it. All of it painting a clear picture. Alan was running a pharmaceutical operation on campus and hiding the profits in plain sight. And it didn't stop there. Jake's team opened a separate inquiry into Richard Davis's real estate empire. Some of those property deals looked too clean. Cash purchases with no tenants, rental income not lining up. It was enough for the IRS to start digging through years of filings. The feds love it when white-collar crime drops in their lap. Meanwhile, Helen Davis got put on indefinite leave from her firm. Can't represent Fortune 500 clients while your kid's mugshot is trending locally and your husband's business is under audit. Jessica and Brittany imploded. They accused me of overreacting, destroying innocent lives, and going nuclear over teenage drama. Brittany posted another sob story about how I weaponized my PTSD against a college student. She even accused Lucas of manipulating me. But the facts spoke for themselves. I didn't fabricate evidence. I didn't hack anything. I didn't even make threats. I just connected the dots and handed them to people who get paid to act when crimes occur. Then came the restraining order hearing. Jessica brought lawyers. Brittany cried in court. My parents tried to testify that I had always been vengeful. One even called me unstable. Cute. My attorney calmly dropped exhibit after exhibit. The original videos from middle school. The panic attack Lucas suffered at his internship after their ambush. The police report. The court filings from Alan's charges. Medical statements showing Lucas's renewed trauma response. He closed with, "This isn't a grudge. This is a father using legal channels to protect his son from continued harassment by people who've shown no remorse, and whose behavior keeps escalating." The judge didn't hesitate. 3-year no-contact restraining orders for Jessica, Brittany, my parents, and Alan. Done. Alan pled out to reduce charges to avoid federal time. 18 months probation, 500 hours of community service, and a full psychological evaluation. His plans for med school? Gone. His name? Toasted. Richard's company lost 2 major commercial contracts. Still under investigation. Local paper ran the story on page 1 under the headline, "Prominent Developer's Son Expelled, Charged in College Drug Scandal." Brittany dropped out of her pre-med program. Her GoFundMe was flagged for fraud after an anonymous tip about misuse of images and fake claims. Now she's at community college, working part-time and still blaming everyone but herself. Jessica hasn't spoken to me since. My parents are still concerned about family unity, but haven't called since the cease and desist letter arrived. And Lucas? He's thriving. Sophomore year at Duke. His consulting business is expanding. He's dating a girl who thinks his scars make him look like a cyberpunk Bruce Wayne. He still locks his door at night, but he's not afraid anymore. Most importantly, Alan is no longer a shadow in his life. So Reddit, ATA for destroying my niece's boyfriend after he tormented my son? Call it what you want. I call it protection. You come for my family, you better be ready for the full weight of resources, connections, and operational capabilities that I've spent 20 years building. And if you're stupid enough to keep committing federal crimes while I'm watching, well, that's just poor planning on your part. Some people call it revenge. I call it justice with better logistics.